Just to follow up on what you were talking about earlier, you said like the revolution in Egypt is unfinished and it's got a long way to go. Regarding that, what role could or should the U.S. or other countries in the world have in helping to shape a healthy government?
Anything we do overtly will probably backfire. I would say let the process take its course. Encourage stability, of course, encourage democracy. Although too often in the past we've seen those as operating at cross purposes. But we're not really able to shape the results. And anything that looks like American involvement is probably going to backfire. Anybody who comes to be seen as America's candidate is going to probably have that used against him by his opponents, his or her opponents. But realistically, probably his. I mean, the last thing anybody wants to be seen as is America's man. That's how Mubarak was seen, and that's how Mubarak was seen by a lot of people. It wasn't always how we saw him, but it was how they saw him. And nobody wants to be in that position of being the lackey of the United States. In fact, I think you'll probably see people maneuvering to be more and more independent of the United States. Nobody wants to do without the U.S. aid. Nobody realistically wants to do without the U.S. But the image of America as meddling in Egyptian politics was often used against Mubarak, although it was sometimes used by Mubarak too when he wanted to counter American pressure on him. He would say, look, the mean Americans are pressuring me again, and make himself look like the independence guy.
Okay, regarding Egypt as having the police force that it did recently under Mubarak and them being ousted, what future do you see for domestic security and a new police force coming in and helping to secure the country once elections take place?
Well, the police force that was pulled out of the streets during the first days of the demonstrations has only gradually been coming back into the streets. It's still not present in a lot of parts of the country, but it is gradually coming back. The old state security, the really hated security police of several groups, but the state security has officially been abolished, although a new national security force has been set up, and a lot of the leadership are from the same ranks, although some of the more notorious ones have been removed. I think who the Interior Minister is going to be one of the big questions for any new government and for any president who hopes to consolidate power. An unpopular or tough Interior Minister will not sit well. The security forces are still going to take a long time to retrain and get used to the idea that the people in the streets aren't their enemies, which is ingrained in them for a very long time. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult in the way that it was in the former Soviet Union or other places, but the old security forces are going to have to be defanged, as it were, without completely abolishing them, because you still need somebody to patrol the streets.
Okay. And finally, you mentioned you believe a finalized Egyptian government state will be a great influence on the region and the other Arab countries around it. If this new Egypt is something that gradually forms over the next couple of years, will the end result be a dynamic enough catalyst to spark further change down the road?
Depends on whether it works. You know, and since we don't know the outcome of the process, a successful democratization of Egypt would have an enormous impact, I think, throughout the region. A successful democratization. A descent of Egypt into chaos would threaten the whole region. A descent of Egypt into some sort of radicalism, which it suddenly either became a radical Islamist state or became a openly confrontational with Israel again. I mean, the peace with Israel is not terribly popular in Egypt, but I don't think people want war either. But if you got a very confrontational regime, I think that would probably have a negative effect on the stability of the region. But there's so many other things in play, because you've got the ongoing drama in Syria. You've got an uncertain future in the Gulf. The Gulf is stable at the moment, but in part, like Bahrain, it's stable because of outside occupation. We just don't know. We're at the beginning of a revolutionary era here. And, you know, if you think of the French Revolution as starting in 1789 and not ending till Waterloo, we may be looking at a period like that, where we're looking at a generation or more of change. And Egypt's only part of that, but I think a successful democratization in Egypt would have an enormous impact on the rest of the region, depending on what happens everywhere else too, though.